Kaur. Harnidh is a startup operator. She's a poet and also an author, and is renowned for her book, The Inability of Words, which she published when she was only 20 years old. She's very passionate about doing advocacy work towards self-love and body positivity. So without any further delay, over to you.
Okay. Everyone else here spoke about what they're working on right now, how they're creating, how they're building out. And there have been questions ad nauseum about the mental health of consumers of social media. We talk about it day in and day out. How does social media impact someone's mental health when they consume it? One of the things I wish we spoke a little bit more about is about what happens when you create. And like having, because we don't actually like influencers. We watch them, but we don't like them. So I come to you as a semi-retired influencer, which essentially means that I'm irrelevant. Now, I know you're going to say, but hey, I follow your content. I like what you post. Say that I'm not funny or sexy or interesting. I said that I'm irrelevant. Now, for the scope of relevance as we know it, to the capacity to engage with, be inspired by, and consciously shape pop culture for the average online Indian from a largely English-speaking or English-enabled, relatively privileged and seemingly socially engaged demographic, which is a mouthful. So I'm going to stick with people like us. We are the center of our own universe, the masters of our electronic domains, and the creators of aspiration. We are also mildly delusional. We think that we are important and that our words matter in a way that's far more outsized than they actually do. We think that generally also, but for influencers, both big and small, it's so much worse. And that is why I'm here to de-influence you a little. I got onto the newer internet early. I didn't have MySpace or Orkut, but I was really early as an adopter of Twitter, Instagram, and very, very regrettably, Ask.fm. If you don't know what that is, I'm so jealous of you. Importantly, to the idea that I could really be to be. On the internet, no one knows if you're a dog or an awkward, bullied, inspired by the movie 13 going on 30, and really thought that if she could seem older, wiser, and stronger than she was, that's what people would see her as. In a culture that disincentivizes anything but the straight and narrow for teenagers and young adults, the internet allows decide how you're perceived, and you can create and claim a mirage as your identity, and it can allow you an escape from your reality, even if it's or ours. For the longest time, I felt more real, more whole online than I did IRL. On the internet, I belonged. I had clout and I was important. This is an intoxication, especially for normal people who are creators who don't happen to be creatives. We don't have any technical expertise. We don't have any, outsized domain knowledge, current esteemed, colleagues excluded. We write it with put up a video after putting our cameras, in front of a window and start speaking, and then you're rewarded, you're adored, and you're constantly adulated for being who you are. And that's an incredibly attractive proposition. Just be yourself and we will love you for it. There can be nothing as intoxicating as that. And the question is, do they love you? Do they actually follow you? I don't think so. Your audience belongs to the platform it's on. They are on Instagram and have to find you and follow you till you entertain them. You promise yourself you're going to be authentic and real and never change yourself for this audience. But then you do. You realize they like a certain phrase, a specific quirk, and idiosyncrasy that you never found particularly special about yourself. And you realize that it's very easy to contort yourself into a certain shape because it's not at that point something that's impacting your real life. Till it does. Here's where I'm going to digress a little into the economics of creators and the creator economy. For some context, I'm a product manager. I build the platforms a lot of you are trying to study and often hate. That puts me in a really fun situation where I sometimes have to defend algorithms. So that's nice. But yes, the creator economy is very, very interesting. Influencers, youth, intelligence, beauty, all leading to, at the end of the day, their real jobs, which is billboarding. Indian influencers specifically sell to the fastest growing economy and the largest consumer base, pegged at 850 million. That's a large sounding pie, right? There's enough for everyone. But the problem is 350 million are banked online and have ability to transact online and buy the brands these influencers are selling. 85 million are people who actually transact online with the regularity that would help them be labeled as online purchasers, out of which 45 only the people who transacted more than twice in 6 months. The pie looks a lot smaller now, doesn't it? Now the problem here is that out of those 45 million, I built a case. I worked for a very large food aggregator where we were building for online markets. We're not looking at more than 12 to 15 million consumers who are going to be regular, sustainable purchasers who buy both tangible and intangible goods online. So what we point where there are going to be as many influencers as consumers. And a lot of these consumers also think of themselves as possible creators and influencers. So called the creator part of the creator economy. The economy bit, much, and I don't think we're getting there anytime soon. So when does this all leave influencers? Mind you, Indian influencers have not cracked monetization. Right now, what we're working with is ad monetization, which is already reducing. YouTube Shorts have demonetized themselves. Instagram is paying lesser. Facebook is paying lesser. Second is brand monetization, which is your lifestyle, fashion influencers, etc., which is a very small pie of the large segment of influencers that exist. And the third is building your own that you're hoping to sell with the distribution you have accumulated as an influencer. Now, all of this relies on your relevance. What is relevance? Relevance is this ineffable ability to capture the moment, to create content around it, to figure out what trends actually are sustaining themselves, what do people want to hear you say. All of these feed into relevance and it's exhausting. So the party line I tend to trot out when someone asks why I'm not an active influencer anymore is that I went to China to study. I came back and found that my priorities had shifted. While that is true, that is not the whole truth. The truth was simply that I was exhausted. I couldn't keep up and create. I simply didn't have the capacity or the courage or strength to continuously react to things that social media threw at me. This isn't a unique experience. Social media burnout, especially creator burnout, is incredibly real. Distance, literal great firewall of China distance from social media also made me realize how incredibly anxious, depressive, and constantly angry I was when I was incredibly active on social media. I was focusing on reacting rather than learning and feeding an ever-present, ever-hungry algorithm I had no control over. The truthier truth, however, is that I was simply not what the algorithm wanted anymore. I had aged out of the system, not in a literal chronological way, but I was definitely past my shelf life in very large parts because my content did not pander to what I call the cult of relatability. What does relatability mean? You would think it means being relatable. No, it means being likable. When someone expects you to be relatable to them, they want incredibly personal realities and perspectives reflected in your existence, but with rose tinted glasses on. They want you to be like them, but they concurrently want you to be better. This is influencers are often fascinating to watch because they project a reality in which they face the struggles that you and me face, but do so with preternatural grace, perfectly coiffed hair, and so much ability to make it object of aspiration and envy. You want to be them, but you also want to pull them down to your level too, because you want to see them fall into the pits that you assume you are in. It's mortifying to see that happen, because Schadenfreude is probably the most lucrative spectator sport of our times today. It makes the most money. Think about when it comes to celeb gossip. What do you like to read when it comes to the Kardashians? You like to read when they mess up. And I don't think that's a very nice one. So what when they cannot monetize their relatability anymore? What happens when they lose their ability to meaningfully monetize their lives? When the inevitable aversion to recording every part of your life comes into play? We don't actually know. Influencers is a modern phenomenon that the concept of an ex-influencer, especially in India, is something unfolding in front of us in real time. What a lot of people don't realize is that the world of influencing is a race to the bottom. Ad spends and brand collaborations are consistently giving diminishing returns because of new privacy regulations and algorithmic irregularities. Combine that with the fact that we're in the amount of consumption influencers can engineer because of a stagnating consumer base, poised to shrink both because of increasing inflation and a post-COVID K-shaped recovery for the Indian economy. The brands and startups that were fueled by, that fueled the gluttony of deals that we saw that influencers were getting are now struggling. They have revised valuations, inability to raise more venture capital money, and are, if history proves me right, going to return to traditional forms of marketing that have given them quantifiable returns on investment. These are hard economic realities of a largely intangible field. In the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a generation of young people who will identify as ex-creators, as ex-influencers and more. They're going to enter the world with a graveyard of content behind them, perceptions they cannot unscrub, and some with business they cannot sustain because they lost the distribution that they built them on. Many will try to break away from the platforms that control them, but will realize that their audiences aren't really their own. Most, I think, will realize that with all the perks, they simply make up for the anxiety, stress, and disassociation that being online causes. Now, let's be real. I may be entirely wrong, and this is like a really meta case of sour grapes because I couldn't stay an influencer. But I'm going to end with 3 pieces of absolutely unsolicited advice for existing, budding, and waning influencers. Number 1, build hard skills. This may come from your experience as influencers or your interests beyond it. But don't expect your influencer status to transition seamlessly into the real world. Collate, articulate, and sell your skills away from your reality as a content creator. Number 2, understand the economics of what you do. A lot of influencers I know do not understand the basics of how marketing work, of how brands work, of how ROIs work. Plan ahead, smart, and plan now. You must have an exit plan ready to deploy whenever you need it to be there. Number 3, distance yourself from the dopamine hits that online adoration gives you. Understand that your audience is not yours and it is simply borrowed. Very few of them would show up for you when you need them because your misery is often fodder for their entertainment. Finally, I hope you find joy in irrelevance. I know I did. I could post what I want, when I want, and experiment with things I'm not particularly good at. I found joy in creating things again because I was able to learn in public without being paranoid about what my lack of assurance looked. Allowed me to be so much more excited about doing new things and having new experiences. As your lives follow the warp and weft of changing realities, I hope you open yourself up to new experiences instead of mourning the old ones. I hope you find in yourself the ability to find joy for yourself, not just the cameras. I hope you realize you're a person, not a billboard, a brand, or a niche. And I truly hope that realization gives you peace. Thank you so much. That was my time.
Thank you so much, Harnidh. So this concludes our speaking